This is the extended outlook for the Chucktown wind report, Friday, June the 26th until Monday, June the 29th. So this week we've seen a fairly strong Bermuda high pressure able to keep the southerly synoptic flow going up the coastline. And we've also seen some inland troughing in some areas of moisture able to actually help with the outflow and the return flow of the sea breezes to bring speeds to moderate levels. Yesterday we did have some complications from this boundary to our north that bulged to the south overnight as land cooled, and it left a pocket of coastal troughing up and down the South Carolina and southeast North Carolina coast. So that took a little while to burn off as the sea breeze slowly filtered in, and by evening time we reached moderate to somewhat strong levels around 18 to 20 knots. So for today, this boundary has lifted back to the north, and we're expecting something similar to yesterday afternoon. Before it got into the 20s, I would say we're going to be getting into the upper teens for the build today with this area of mid-state and Piedmont troughing, able to help that return flow of the sea breezes out over the ocean and back into land. We also do have this northeast Gulf high, which is helping to produce some westerly nudging aloft, and what we have is some downslope westerly winds to help some of those thunderstorms build a little bit higher as they vertically stack and then head towards the coast to provide that return flow out for the sea breezes. So we have a couple of things working in favor for us today. We have this Bermuda high pressure, which is actually building, and if we take a look over out into the tropics, we can see exactly where that center is. Now this is the forecast of where it's going to be tomorrow, but it's about where it is today. So we have 1028 millibar Bermuda high pressure, a little bit more characteristic of a Bermuda Azores high as it's centered a little bit more out into the North Atlantic. But this will provide that southerly flow. You can see the ridge axis extending from the center across and then right into about central to southern Florida. So that means all the flow above it is going to be stronger and a little more open. So that's just one. I just wanted you to see where the placement of the center was. So getting back to our map, this should be the case through today and even into tomorrow with a little bit of a stronger build. Now for Sunday, I'm expecting this ridge of high pressure out here to the west to sort of bite down into this boundary. Now what this does is it creates a little bit more rotation on these low pressures as they spin counterclockwise. So what will end up happening is one or two of these low pressures are likely to drop down into this area and then create a frontal boundary that will sweep towards the coastline. And what that will do is it should draw up the southwesterly flow ahead of it, but then as this boundary drops a little bit more over the upstate of South Carolina and across Georgia, our winds will be steered in a more of a west-southwesterly phase, and that'll become more of a zonal flow. And when we say zonal flow, we simply mean just ahead of the boundary. And I'm expecting between the northeast Gulf high pressure and this boundary to sort of draw the winds more of a west-southwest. So Sunday looks like kind of a tricky setup, maybe even some showers and thunderstorms traversing the area, and a weaker overall flow. Now when we get into Monday, once this boundary clears the coast, we should see things start to pick back up, because this Bermuda high, once it does get to the coastline, this Bermuda high is really going to light into it with these southerly winds and fizzle it out. So I'm not expecting too much movement past the coast. It'll slowly fizzle out as a trough, and then Monday we should get back on track with some modest flow building into Tuesday and even into next Wednesday. So let's take a quick look at the satellite, and we do see some overnight clouding, some shower activities associated with some of the nighttime cooling burning off as the sun is going to be coming up here pretty soon, and we do see some dry air, and you see the boundary up here to the north. Looking at the SPC mesoscale analysis, we see most of the bulk of the moisture activity is remaining to our north. Gradients are a little bit more prevalent offshore, but they should work into the coastline today, so things are looking really good. Now real quick, looking at last night's weather balloon, the AM weather balloon for this morning won't be available until about 8 or 8:30, but looking at last night's, we do see this upper level westerly flow, and let me add my editing tools here. So this upper westerly flow is what helps to drive the cloud tops and storm tops towards the coastline. So that's exactly where we want it. We want it right about here. It's 20-25 knots for the most part. I'm expecting some of these mid-level winds to shift to the west as well. And the morning time, we are seeing a little bit of a low-level jet, so there'll be something that looks like this with an inversion and nocturnal jetting. That's called a thermal cap. Now, once that thermal cap breaks, air is able to actually start lifting. So that will come as the sun rises and land heats up, and then we'll start getting that lifting. So be on the lookout for thunderstorms today inland, marching towards the coast. It should provide some pretty healthy return flow out to the ocean. Now, cloud tops, the maximum updraft equilibrium, this is right here. What that simply means is that's about where cloud tops are going to be ending, and that's about 46 to 48,000 feet up in height. So that's pretty significant, and that should give an even stronger return flow. The higher the cloud tops, the stronger the return flow out over the ocean back into land. So that's one thing I always remember about sea breezes is in a true circulation, in a very strong circulation, you want these cloud tops to be able to vertically stack as high as they can go with a westerly flow aloft right here to be able to push that out. Okay, so let's take a look at the Charleston area and what's going on right now. Now, we did see a healthier nocturnal jet at Isle of Palms a little while ago, and here were the numbers between 3 and 4 a.m. It reached about 18 to 19 knots, close to 19 knots, with gusting just into the low 20s. I would expect something similar to this today in this area, maybe a couple of extra knots building. So I would say for the most part, we should expect this to be kind of the norm for this afternoon is for the build with some possibility of a couple of extra knots coming up. If we look at Folly Beach, we can still see the nocturnal jet working along, and that should burn off as the sun comes up and land heats. Now, this is what I refer to as the inversion. So the nighttime inversion is where land cools faster than water. We get that warmer air that was aloft from yesterday afternoon and evening that comes down to the surface, and it keeps the sea breeze directions going, even though it's not a true sea breeze. It's called inversion. And then what we get is the nocturnal jet is that accelerates, especially when you have a frontal boundary in the vicinity of the region. That tends to happen a lot. So this would be the similar setup for Folly Beach today, right about in here. And again, we can expect a couple of extra knots. So the harbor, the jet came up about the same. So when you see all three zones roughly the same in the nocturnal jet, that means the area is going to be more in uniform with the speed. So I'm not expecting the harbor to really jump up any higher than the beaches. So just as a quick recap, we do have the Bermuda high keeping the synoptic southerly flow going. We have this northeast Gulf high to keep that westerly flow. We'll probably see some of these westerly land breezing numbers this morning before the sea breezes turn south to southwest and start to build for the day. The gradient does look strong enough in the area to be able to get those speeds going up by hopefully even before midday. So we might see those numbers start to jump around 11 o'clock or even 11:30. Time is not absolute, but yesterday we did see some of that jumping going on around that time. So forecast for today is going to be 14 to 18 knots along the South Carolina coast, specifically Charleston. For Saturday, a stronger build, I would say 15 to 19 knots. Possibly 16 to 20 and even punching into the low 20s as this build gets stronger and this boundary drops towards the southeast. We'll probably see some low-level jetting ahead of it and get that southwest sea breeze up a little bit higher than what we're going to see today. And then for Sunday, probably see this low pressure drop into this area and then head off to the northeast and drape a frontal boundary towards the coast. So we're waiting to see what happens there. It's not for certain, but we do think that Sunday will be the tricky day in this period, and then Monday that boundary gets fizzled out over the ocean and slowly eaten away by the Bermuda high pressure out here to the east, and then we slowly get back on track for Monday with modest speeds, somewhere between 11 and 15 knots, if not a possible stronger build if we have some residual inland troughing and moisture left over that can help build those sea breezes. The key element here for that on Monday is going to be this northeast Gulf high to stay in place and stay fixed to keep that westerly flow going. So that helps that down sloping off the mountains with some of that cooler air that gets trapped up there, cooler moist air trapped and heads down slope towards the coast. Okay, so that will do it for the extended outlook for the Chucktown Wind Report, and everyone have a good weekend.